Angela Cerbi, Fred Film Radio from the Rome Film Fest, Alice nella città section specifically. I'm here with Eva Cools, director of Clio. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Clio is your first feature film and is a story about a tragedy that happens to a family, to a girl's family. And it has some personal references, I know, but how much?
Well, it's important to know that the film is not autobiographical, but it is personal inspired because I lost a family member in a car accident with hit and run. And that grief, what happened to my family inspired me to make this raw story about a young girl who loses her parents. So it's not, of course, the same story, but I used the emotion as a basis for this story.
One of the key struggles that Cleo faces is, besides, of course, losing her parents, not knowing why and how, but know who did it. Not having she's in need of a closure of this. And this goes throughout the whole film until she finds it. Do you think that it was a key element for you in writing it?
Yes, of course, because the story is personal, but also I did a lot of research where I found out that when people are in grief and they lose a person, but they don't find the answers about how it happens and who is responsible, it's much more difficult to overcome this grief. And that is really the story I wanted to tell, like how does it feel for a young person to lose her parents, which is like the most horrible thing that can happen to you, and not find the answers to this. It's so difficult to have this process of grief and loss. How do you cope with that? That was the main question of the movie.
Because everything stays suspended and you cannot
Yes.
go over it
Yes.
unless you close it.
Yes, that's the thing. She's actually longing for closure, but looking for the way to do it.
You decided to, in this story, to put the character of Leo's, which is like this guy that she meets. And there is a kind of a love story that started blossoming. But Leo is much more than that, and we know while we go on in the film. What brought you to create this trigger in order to have the story going on? Why in this way?
I have maybe an offline question that is like, I don't know how much I can tell about this character to not have a spoiler.
No, I know. So you just say whatever you can say without spoiling.
Yeah, okay. So for me, the relationship between Cleo and Leos is a platonic relationship. And I find this interesting because she is looking for comfort, and what is beautiful is when somebody has such a personal tragedy, it often happens that they tell their whole life to a person they don't know, because they don't have anything to lose. And it's the other way around. So actually these two strangers, they find each other.
And they need each
and
other.
they need each other, and they help each other while they don't know them, the one or the other, and they don't need nothing from each other. So that was like the complexity of the relationship, and at the same time the beauty that I wanted to show.
In the film, Cleo, after the tragedy, stays with her grandmother, and the grandmother is a very strong pillar of her life and of the film too. And grandmothers are the pillars for us, in real life. How do you build up the grandmother character?
Well, the grandmother character is, for me, an interesting character because at the first vision, it looks like she's like a very normal person and she doesn't show her grief, but there are so many layers underneath because she has no time to show her grief. She has to be strong for the whole family. She has to keep the family alive and be there for her grandchildren. And that is also a particular phase that I wanted to show in this grieving process, how some people grieve in a very silent way because they have to be there for the family, and others they can let themselves go. And this is something that I saw a lot with people when they have children, that they have to put their grief aside. And I wanted to show with this character the silent suffering.
Yeah, the strength of, I mean, bearing a pain without being allowed to show it.
Yes.
There is like another character in the film which is very present, even if not very visible at the beginning, which is music. Music is really important because Cleo, through music, gets to a better understanding of her lost father and like she is herself through classical music, which is really unusual, being her a 17-year-old girl. You know, we think that 17 guys and girls only listen to rock, punk, electro, that they don't care about classical music, but she does care.
Yes, well, I thought it was important to show a nuanced view about a teenager because, well, I also studied classical piano when I was young, and I think that nowadays the youngsters don't only listen to hip hop and rock music, but they can also perfectly listen at the same time to classical music and go to classic music school. And yes, of course, it's true what you say, that music is a very important role, has a very important role, and is a character, because for Cleo, classical music is a catalyst to overcome her grief, and it's a great consolation because it's very recognizable for people when they feel bad, they listen to music, and it's so universal. Mm-hmm. But in this particular story, for me, the classical music was even more touching because it's pure.
Yeah, I understand. Well, another thing is about the way you portray Cleo's character. She is kind of very elusiveness in her. So she's not very. I mean, she doesn't come out to us very clear and crystal clear. There's some shades always, you know, on her, which is actually really, really intriguing in terms of viewing the film, because it gets you, it keeps you there, in order to, you want to find out more. Why did you choose not to? I mean, why did you choose her to be this way?
Yes, I find it very important to portray a young woman, a female character who has a great range of shades, as you say, and a great complexity, because I get really, really annoyed to see characters who are black and white, and especially when you see movies with female characters, this happens a lot. Mm-hmm. And for me, as a director, it's important to, when you show this character, to make her a strong character, but also show her when she's having a bad day, when she's aggressive, when she's being blunt to her grandmother, at the same time showing her when she's fragile, when she's apologizing, when she knows that she's doing bad stuff. And this range of emotions is what makes a character recognizable and real.
Mm-hmm. And also maybe the fact that she's a 17-year-old girl makes her even more complex, because at that age, you are very difficult to grasp.
Yes, that's something that I always, it always inspired me. In my short movies, I also talked a lot about these youngsters, and because I think it's an age where young people are looking for themselves and they get lost a lot. They don't know who they are, they don't know where they come from, or they try to find out where they come from, at the same time where they're going to. They're very confused. And this is a very interesting period, but a very difficult period in life too. And that's why there are so many stories to tell about this age.
I have one last question about yourself, mainly. How making this film was healing or helpful for you in order to cope with your own personal story? Was it like a tool that you used unconsciously or like consciously?
I think it was unconsciously because I mean I don't see film as a therapy. There are a lot of good therapists for that, but what did change me is that well I had another view before I made this movie. So by doing a lot of research about hit and run accidents, I actually changed it. It changed my vision because I found out that these car accidents often we always look for a perpetrator and a victim, and we want to have these clear answers about how things go. But when I did this research, I found out that it's often not that clear, and that you have a lot of accidents who have shared responsibilities, and that's awful because people cannot pinpoint it. But it's often like this in life, and that's where I changed my perspective on the subject.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks a lot to Eva Kuhls, director of Clio, for having been with us here in Rome at the Rome Film Festival di Alice nella Città. I'm Angelo Cerbi for Fred, the Festival Insider.